Hey, good afternoon. I'm Alex Colon. This is Sasha Segan, and you are watching Dialed In. This is PC Mag's weekly show all about mobile phones and technology. And today we have some great news stories that we're going to talk about. We're also going to show you two of the hottest phones, probably of the year.
Yeah.
This is the Samsung Galaxy S9 and the S9 Plus. So those are coming up at the end of the show. Before that, we're going to talk about some news. If you have any questions about the things that we're talking about and you're watching on Facebook Live, feel free to leave a comment and we'll answer them for you on air. If you're watching this later on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. You can leave comments there too. So let's start with our first. This is some pretty big news that happened yesterday. And this is the Qualcomm-Broadcom story, which you have been talking about, writing about for the last, 16 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the last couple of months.
Right.
So for people who aren't familiar with this story, Qualcomm is a major US-based research firm and chipset manufacturer. They're based in San Diego. They have played a big role in the development of every cellular standard ever, basically. They're playing a huge role in 5G. They're already starting to develop 6G. And for a while now, they've been fending off a hostile takeover bid by this company, Broadcom. And now Broadcom, which was formerly known as Avago, is another chip maker. But the concern that a lot of us have had in the tech industry is that the Broadcom leadership's way of doing things is generally to buy things up and to cut away anything that isn't making an immediate profit, and then to sell chips cheaply. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't really fit well with what we love from Qualcomm, which is that they invest a lot in R&D on these really long bets that may not pay off for years, may not pay off at all. And that doesn't go very well with the philosophy of a Broadcom, which is invest as little as possible, make as much profit as possible, making things as efficiently as possible.
Right. So what's happening with this deal? Why are we talking about it now?
So yesterday, the president, which was really the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., announced that the government would not permit Qualcomm to be bought by Broadcom. They could do that because for the moment, Broadcom's official headquarters is in Singapore. Broadcom actually was proposing to move it to the U.S., but the CFIUS letter made it clear that the reason was not that Broadcom is a foreign company. The reason is that, like all of us tech analysts, they're worried that Broadcom would slash Qualcomm's R&D so severely that Qualcomm would lose its influence over standard-setting processes and its influence in the industry, which would endanger U.S. technology leadership in general. That said, so it's a good outcome.
Right.
It's a good outcome. That said, I am really, really disturbed by some of the reporting around the reasons that the government used to reach this conclusion.
And what are those reports saying?
They're afraid of Huawei.
So how does Huawei figure into this?
Right, because Huawei's not buying Qualcomm, right? Okay. So, and we saw this back in January with a report in Axios that kind of went nowhere about somebody in the national security apparatus proclaiming that we should build a government-run 5G network. That was also this fear of Huawei, okay? In this narrative, Huawei is this kind of all-powerful arm of the Chinese government that if we don't fight it, it will take over all wireless network standards, embedding Chinese spying into everything, and that when we wake up, Huawei will own us and the Chinese will be able to watch everything.
Now, why is this fear concentrated on Huawei?
I know.
I mean, is there a
It's concentrated on Huawei because Huawei's ownership structure is particularly opaque. And Huawei has done a really lousy job of PR. There's a whole bunch of Chinese handset firms and Chinese handset firms that function in the US. Huawei ZTE, TCL Alcatel, OnePlus, I'm missing some. CoolPad.
Right.
But this focuses on Huawei because Huawei is so big, because Huawei has traditionally been kind of a national hero for Chinese industry, and because Huawei is so bad at explaining who runs Huawei. Like, I don't know who runs Huawei. Huawei, every time you ask Huawei who runs Huawei, you get these weird, constantly shifting, rotating carousel of answers. And that makes people really scared that Huawei is basically a front for the Chinese military.
So basically, this story amounts to then there's a positive and negative to it, right?
Yeah, and the positive is that Qualcomm will remain independent and will remain run by people who think it's important to invest in the future. The negative is that our government seems to be trying to open up a trade war with Huawei, which is just going to result in, like, I cannot see good things coming of the government declaring Huawei to be an enemy, and then, the Chinese government, I guess, declares Qualcomm to be an enemy, and then we have, and there have been kind of low-level trade war things happening around this for a while now, but ramping up that trade war does not feel like a good thing to do.
Right. All right. So let's put trade wars to the side, and let's move on to our next story, which is just more positive overall.
Yes.
And that is Android P is out.
Yeah, and Android P developed by another U.S. company, Google. Android P, the first developer preview is out, which means that Android P is still in flux. It's still definitely going to change. It's still a considerable distance before it's going to be final.
We don't even know what the P stands for.
We don't even know what dessert the P stands for. What's your dessert pick?
Peanut butter?
Oh, peanut butter cup. Yeah. Definitely peanut butter cup. I mean, really, does anyone have any suggestions other than peanut butter cup? If you have looks like we have a suggestion.
Something like peppermint based.
Oh.
You like peppermint patty? Yeah.
I mean, it's not really to my taste, but
yeah, it could be
to each
peppermint
their
patty.
own.
Could be peppermint stick. I don't know, but yeah, I'm definitely thinking peanut butter cup. Somebody online said Pocky, but that's copyrighted. Why make a deal?
Right.
I guess
they've done that before.
Yeah, they've done it with Kit Kat.
Yeah.
Totally, and Oreo.
Anyway, naming conventions aside.
Naming conventions aside, Android P does have some new features. We'll step through a couple of the new features that are featured in our feature on the Android P features. Better indoor better indoor positioning using Wi-Fi triangulation. That's a thing you'll be able to do. Notch support, because there is a flood of notched LCD displays on the market, and so Android phone makers feel that they need to support them. That one's just silly. You can get media in the pop-down notifications now, so that, as our article says, when someone sends you an unsolicited dick pic, that will get pushed to you in a way that while you're having dinner with your mom, she will see it. It'll be able to, if your phone has two rear cameras, it'll be able to process both streams at once.
Meaning
there'll be some interesting video effects, some interesting photo effects, but I also think this will enable it to more easily construct 3D video. And I think this is about constructing 3D video files for future AR, VR use.
Okay.
Okay, Android P will support that. Let's see. Locking down background processes' ability to access the microphone, the camera, and the sensors. It's good for privacy, but it's also good for battery life.
Right.
Because
those things aren't running.
Right, they won't be turning those things on, and it won't be sucking down battery. So those are some Android P features there.
Those look like pretty good improvements to me.
Yeah, they're pretty good improvements. They're not. I feel like there hasn't been, though, a version with like massive improvements since Nougat.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah,
Oreo was kind of,
tweaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is good, but also a little tweaky. But like, I guess we can say Android is mature. I was thinking P is the 16th letter in the alphabet. This is the 16th letter that they've had.
Right.
Yeah.
Although they started with Cupcake.
Yeah, they started with Cupcake, but I think they had in-house releases that were A and B. They just didn't have dessert names for them.
Right. Sorry, we have a question?
What's your opinion on the Xperia XZ2?
The Xperia XZ2 looks good, is going to be in the US dramatically overshadowed by the Galaxy S9.
Yeah, we don't have a release date for it yet. We did see it at Mobile World Congress. We have some hands-ons online. We saw the regular size one and the compact version.
Yep. In terms of the regular size one, its downsides are no headphone jack, lower resolution screen than the S9, and I do believe it has a single rear camera, 19 megapixel
19
single
megapixel.
rear camera. Yeah, so that kind of makes it a little more harder a sell than the S9 Plus. The compact is compact, and there's not a lot out there that's like the Xperia compact line. So I think that the compact is compelling for the niche it fits, but Sony's just been so bad at selling these in the US.
Right. And just from past phones, we have tended to prefer the compact, just because there aren't many small phones out there.
There aren't many small, powerful phones out there.
Right.
And the compact is going to be small and powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next story. This one, I feel like I'm judging them by which ones are good news and which one's bad news. This one is kind of a bad news story.
Yeah.
Motorola, just last week.
That was the other Chinese handset company.
There you go.
There you go.
Motorola last week just slashed a bunch of its staff.
Yes, and this is harsh. It is so tough to see Motorola just keep getting gut punched. They've been cutting staff for months now in periodic tranches.
Right.
And it looks like they're cutting an unspecified number of more staff, and this is going to start. The bright side of this is that it may cause them to start cutting down their confusing number of product lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even we review them, and I'm off the top of my head, I can't. There's the X, the Z, the G.
There's the C, E, G, X, and Z.
Right.
And now that is, if that was just what they had, if they just had a C, an E, a G, an X, and a Z, that wouldn't be too bad. But as we found with the Gs this year, the G5, the G5S, the G5S Plus, like they have so many sub products in each of their product lines. It's confusing.
Right.
I think you can only do that if you're Samsung.
And even then, it's still confusing.
Exactly. Like, so the rumor out there is that this is going to cause them to kill the X, which was kind of uncomfortable. I mean, in the US, the X is in the unbuying valley.
Right.
Where nobody buys $400 phones. Yeah. But if they could focus on like a great E phone at $129, a great G phone at $229, and then a great Z phone at $600, I think that'd be a much more focused, much more powerful product line than they have now.
Right. Now, do you think, because they've been kind of holding on to those Moto mods for almost 2 years now, do you think that's hurting them?
I think unfortunately they haven't seen a lot of profit from the Moto mods, and I can say that by the number of Moto mod giveaways they have, by the fact that they had to clear inventory of those projector Moto mods.
Right.
It's a little sad. I love the concept, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to sell phones.
All right, let's move on to our next story. And this one, not quite news, this is just pure speculation, but we've been talking, why is there no Apple event yet? We haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen invitations.
Okay, so we did get an announcement of an Apple event today, and it was not the one we were expecting.
Right.
So Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference was announced for June 4 through 8. Now, many people are saying that this cements the idea that Apple will not have a spring event.
And we were expecting a spring event to bring new tablets,
iPhone SE 2.
iPhone SE 2, right.
iPhone SE is looking really old right now. And I love the iPhone SE, but they need to update that phone. So we were expecting new iPads. We were expecting an iPhone SE 2, maybe something else, but definitely those two things. And it looks like Apple is just gonna, last year they just did a press release.
Right. I mean, do you think they might hold it for WWDC?
They might hold it for WWDC.
I feel like they used to announce more products back then than
at
they have
WWDC.
recently.
Yeah. Like for a while, they sort of swung towards WWDC being all software. So maybe there's the last year I think they did the iPad Pros at WWDC.
Right.
So maybe they'll do a full iPad line refresh at WWDC. That makes sense. But that does leave the question of the SE and whether they're even going to continue the iPhone SE line at all.
I hope so. I mean, we like that phone. Again, it's small, powerful phones.
Yeah, I recommend it to a lot of people. I guess best case scenarios, sometime later this month or maybe in early April, there's a press release. And they announced that there's a new iPhone SE, relatively low key.
Right.
And we'll get it in our hands. That's what we're hoping for.
All right, so let's move on to the two phones that are here in front of us. The Galaxy S9, the smaller one, and the Galaxy S9 Plus, slightly larger.
Yes.
So we just reviewed these phones. The S9 Plus is our editor's choice, 4.5 stars. The Galaxy S9, 4 stars, also an excellent phone. You've spent now over a week with the two phones. You want to talk a little bit about them and what you like?
Man, these are nice phones. I mean, so I'm a regular Galaxy S8 user. This is my S8 right here in my nice rugged spec case so that I can drop it. And the S9, doesn't make radical changes, especially on the smaller one.
Right.
But makes everything a little better. And some of the things that I'm most excited to test, I actually need more specialized radio testing equipment for. But the screen's a little brighter, the speakers are a little louder. There's more LTE bands and more LTE band combinations for better LTE speed.
Right.
The processor's a little faster.
And this is across both phones.
Across both phones. Now, what sets the S9 Plus apart is more RAM, so you can cycle through more. Apps without those apps having to reload, and this secondary camera. And this is a secondary 2x camera, so it's 2x zoom. It's not really a zoom. It's a camera that's fixed to be greater magnification.
Right.
And that's a feature that Samsung owners previously had to go to the Note for.
Right.
But now it's on the S for $100 less. And so I found that really compelling. It's a big reason why this one got the editor's choice.
Now, as far as size goes, obviously the S9 Plus is the larger phone.
Yeah.
But do you think it makes that much of a difference? Does it feel like a big phablet that you wouldn't want to use in one hand?
It's small for a big phone, okay? And if you have small hands, the little phone is definitely still going to be more comfortable. I mean, these phones are almost exactly the same size as last year's S8 and S8 Plus. They're just, I believe, a tiny bit thicker.
Right.
So I do find the Plus to be a little difficult to use in one hand.
Okay.
It's true. But it becomes a question of, at what point do the additional features outweigh the ergonomics? And we had the same experience last year with the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus.
Right.
When we decided to switch the EC to the 8 Plus to say, what, the dual cameras really matter to us. Yeah.
Let's pause and take a question.
Is it true there's no Wi-Fi calling on the unlocked S9 Plus on AT&T?
On AT&T, yes. Okay, so on the unlocked device, you get Wi-Fi calling for Sprint and T-Mobile, but not with Verizon or AT&T, and that is because Verizon and AT&T have not verified the unlocked device for their Wi-Fi calling function. That could easily be added or pushed in a firmware update, but for now, Verizon and AT&T are saying that if you want Wi-Fi calling, you need to use the carrier-branded models of the phone. There is nothing physically different between the carrier-branded model and the unlocked model. It is just that Verizon and AT&T have not pushed this feature in firmware to the unlocked phones yet.
Right. We have another question.
Is the S9 Plus camera better than the Note 8s?
Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay. So this is a really interesting thing that our camera expert Jim Fisher found in testing. In terms of the hardware, yes. In terms of the hardware, we have that new switchable f2.4 to f1.5 aperture. Gives you a little bit clearer images in good light with the f2.4, a little bit brighter images in low light with the f1.5. He found that when shooting in RAW mode. However, when shooting in standard JPEG mode, the current version of the S9 software applies a sharpening effect that Jim found to be less appealing than the JPEG software on the Note 8 and the S8.
Right.
So you have a case where the hardware is better, but the software then applies a filter that Jim found less appealing.
You could get around it
Yep.
by using the raw images. You could also, I mean, it's slightly subjective. You can take a look at our review. We have the two images side by side.
Yeah.
And until Jim pointed it out and I saw it in the two photos side by side, I didn't realize necessarily that they were over sharpened.
And okay, so the reason I'm being so hesitant about what I'm saying is that I am well known to be a Philistine at PC Mag. I am a lousy photographer and I have a lousy eye for photos. So I, to some extent, have the eye of the average, average viewer who likes cheap effects as opposed to the photo expert. And I like the more heavily sharpened photos. I like to see where everything is and all the details. I mentioned that to Jim, and he made like a horrible face, like I had just fed him something repulsive. So they're definitely going for a particular taste.
Right.
Yeah.
We have another question.
Are either of these phones much of an upgrade over the Pixel 2 XL?
If you hate the Pixel 2 XL screen, then yeah.
But what if the person who's asking this question, if they own a Pixel 2 XL?
And they love their Pixel 2 XL. No, it's not a big jump.
But even if they hate it, should they buy this?
I mean, if they hate their Pixel 2 XL screen, I mean, for God's sake, the screen is, your window on the world. Sell it on eBay and get something with a nicer screen. If you don't have a problem with your Pixel 2 XL screen, I'm just saying this because the Pixel 2 XL screen has gotten like such a range of emotional responses. If you don't have a problem with your Pixel 2 XL screen, no, it is not a big upgrade.
You'll get a faster processor.
Slightly faster, slightly faster processor. I mean, you do get the 2x camera on the big phone.
Right.
So that's something that the Pixel totally can't do. The regular camera, it's a wash. It's a debate. The radio's slightly better, but I wouldn't say enough to throw out your recent $800 phone purchase.
Right.
Yeah.
And the same goes for the S8. If you have an S8, we don't recommend that you run out, sell it, and upgrade to the S9.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. The S9 is an incremental update to the S8. The thing is, though, like what they're really trying to sell to are people who have the S7, the S6, other older phones. There and you see that it's an incremental update in those unlocked prices, in the fact that they're keeping the price the same. They're not trying to push the price the way Apple is.
Right.
They're making it clear that they are just updating with the latest components, but it isn't a massive change from last year's flagships.
Any other questions? All right, so again, this is the Galaxy S9 Plus. This is the Galaxy S9. The S9 Plus, 4.5 stars. It's our editor's choice. The S9, 4 stars. Still great if you want the smaller phone. Thanks for tuning in to Dialed In, and we'll be back again next week with a new show.